Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. This is Ted. We have
Ryan,
Dave,
Nate.
And today we're here to talk about Monster versus Monster. We had a user, Jordan X Lord, suggest we do Duergar versus Drow. We just had a long
exhausting combat.
hour and a half long combat, 5e. And let's talk about it.
I don't know. After that combat, I need a drink that requires a con save.
yeah.
All right. Well, on this side of the table, we had the Drow.
Oh yeah, it works out. We're sitting by way where we were running.
And on that side of the table, we had.
Did you guys coordinate your outfits too?
We might have.
No.
That's right. Well, really, we should have dressed up as Drow.
Yeah. That could be really bad. There was a big RA thing with that, and it was a whole ordeal.
Yeah.
So first off, I want to say how much of a pain in the arse it was to try and come up with an even distribution of points for this battle.
Well, let me weigh in from the Duergar side of it, because the Drow side was actually fairly easy because there was a lot of options.
We had to make a commensurate Duergar force, yeah.
And we had to actually build like elite Duergar because they don't exist.
Well, because Drow get way too much love.
The Drow have a basic Drow, an elite warrior, a mage, and a priestess. And the Duergar have Duergar.
Yes.
So you've got a 200 XP Duergar, and then a variety of Drow. So really, I mean, there was a lot of planning and a lot of...
Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So what we did is we built a deadly encounter for a 5th level party, figured out the XP budget, and then built Duergar.
Spend it on monster versus monster.
And spend it on monster versus monster.
So
the Drow was easy to do.
The Drow, we did a Drow mage and filled it in with 8 basic Drow warrior. So we have a 2900 XP Drow mage and 850 XP basic Drow.
So we had to kind of bash ours together from the Duergar, and we went with a fanatic cultist. Only because it's not even like the optimal thing. Like, we could have probably did way better with either like a berserker or something, or maybe a Duergar gladiator,
or a high level cleric or something.
Yeah, or a high level spellcaster. But we were trying to keep it even and not go too crazy with it. So the Duergar are CR1, the cultist fanatics are CR2. So between the two of them, they loosely equal a 3. Is what we went with, and that's 700. So 3 of them was 2100, and then
you filled in the rest with
our basics.
So you had 3 cultists or fanatics and 6 regulars. We had 8 regulars and 1 Drow mage.
1 elite, basically.
So
our elite were underwhelming. I think that was like a big factor in the battle.
It seemed like you got an awful lot of actions. All that being said, like for those individuals, there's a lot of stuff going on with like having bonus actions. And stuff.
Yeah, the fanatics have a bonus action that's a shield, and they also have a bonus action that's a weapon,
spiritual weapon,
a summoned spectral weapon. Yeah, spiritual weapon.
There were a couple serious factors into this. Number one, your essentially unoptimized, Duergar options. You had to finagle something to make your quote unquote elites. We also had the serious, playing field alteration of the Drow being able to summon a demon, which worked out for our favor. And now, yes, in the actual play, we had like 4 or 5 rounds that the thing was just missing like crazy. So that didn't really affect the battle there.
It hit like
but
3 or 4 times.
They were attacks. It's like
but
if you have a 10th level warrior and he misses half the time, he's still attacked.
But he probably did at least 100 damage.
Well, also too though, he like distracted actions if nothing else. They had to
ran interference.
I'd say the past 4 or 5 last turns was my spellcasters blasting with radiant damage.
Right.
How close was the shadow demon to dying?
He was down 51 out of 66.
Okay, so significantly hurt. All your standard Drow warriors were hurt.
I had 3 Drow left, and out of 13 hit points.
Wait, do we want to talk about the early? Like, just go by the early recount of that, because that's, I think that's pretty significant. Because the first 3 rounds, I was pretty concerned for Team Drow over here. So
well, you guys won initiative. We had the better modifiers, but
the dice came up.
The dice kicked me in the teeth, and you guys immediately walked on the board and went invisible. And then there were some rule questions as to whether or not we can honestly shoot at you with disadvantage or not. Then I cast Fairy Fire, and all but 3 of your guys, said,
"Oh,
I don't care."
Okay, let's talk about the fact that Duergar pretty much ignore anything. Like they have advantage on every single saving throw. Like,
They're tough little.
There's like nothing.
Poison,
so like
illusion.
The fact. I would have almost been better served if my instead of playing the caster, if I had a couple of elite warriors instead, because the only thing you're not, have an advantage of is like just straight up damage, attacks or whatever. Like so, almost if I took the warrior character, I would have been better off.
No, because you know what, that cloud kill did a lot.
Oh
of
no,
damage.
I did a lot of like field control for sure, and the demon,
that lightning bolt wiped out 4 Drow in one shot, 4 Duergar in one shot.
It dropped 2. And did 23 points of damage to two of the fanatics.
Yeah, that's almost 50%.
Just the spellcaster took out 3 guys and wounded 2 more.
Severe.
So,
but I mean, basically, a lot of spell selection that I might have used in other types of encounters.
Magic missiles.
And the magic missiles. While he was consistently rolling 1s and 2s.
I rolled crap on my magic missile damage, but they pinged people down and they always hit. And I didn't have to deal with the fact that you have advantage on the save. But that being said, like your guys having advantage on saving throws usually curtailed the spell selection. I would have loved to have dropped a web or an Evert's black tentacle.
With that being said, we would have loved to have cure wounds instead of inflict.
Yeah.
Where we could have been bolstering our warriors.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of, because let's face it, okay, spiritual weapons seemed impressive because you got to do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it was a +3 to hit.
Yeah.
For
D8.
You were hitting D8 +1, but you were hitting with that fairly consistently for the first few rounds.
Oh, on the regular guys, they did a really good job.
You used he used a shield to stop the
shield spell
to
spell
stop
ever.
the
because
the
both of
damage.
them would have hit, but because I did it triggered from the first one, it blocked the second one too. It was like the best use of shield you could
I
possibly
love that. There's that's a little off topic, but I think when you get I can't wait to get a wizard that has signature spell and make it shield.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think there was definitely a tactical situation, and you guys said from round 3 that you guys felt it was probably bad that you went first, and then there were a couple should we have enlarged before we actually closed, so there were a couple
Well, you know what? One of the problems is the way enlarge actually works is with a thrown missile weapon, it's supposed to revert back to normal size. But in the Duergar entry, it actually stats their enlarged javelins for damage.
Unless did they change the verbiage of enlarged person? Maybe
I don't think so, but it may be a feature of Duergar.
They might actually be carrying the larger javelins, as Ryan was suggesting.
Yeah.
So tactically, do you guys feel that you used what was there, looking back, do you feel that you did the best tactics?
It's hard to say because, a lot of your early rounds when we were just trying to move into position, you had to attack at disadvantage. So
this is true.
So who's to say what would happen?
And that Drow poison is wicked.
Well, except for you're making the roll with advantage. So.
There was one guy who failed, so he had disadvantage, and
another guy got dropped.
And another guy actually did go unconscious. I think he was beat pretty hard by the time he went down. And then on this side of the field, like I felt like I would have liked to have done things differently. I would have liked to have actually spread out more, had some cover, but the side of the field I was in, there wasn't really a lot of that. And then at one point in time, I was honestly trying to, thinking the spellcaster had actually gotten hurt. I was putting my guys in between him and the spiritual weapon, pretty much acting the way a Drow party would. You have to protect your guy in command.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to be under the lash. It's like, wait a second, I survived, but
but
now
also
I'm being
too,
sacrificed to Loth.
I mean, but here the thing with this too, like, as like a little underling, like when you talk about the fraction of the XP budget they are, like the spellcaster is way more valuable.
Oh, absolutely.
So
not only do you have the spell outlets that you have, but if you were to go down, demon goes away too. and that. That amount of factor I can't part with. I'd easily sacrifice one of my piddly minions or both of them.
They're like pawns,
over there, to keep the bigger player alive, and in this case, 2 players.
Maybe we should have focused on the wizard, but I don't think we could get to him. Was part of the problem.
Those hand crossbows are a real problem.
Yeah, and the 25 movement hurts a little bit too.
And that definitely plays into it, and we tried to manipulate that. Tactically, yes, D&D is about moving and attacking and all that kind of stuff, but once you actually pull out miniatures and a grid or anything to represent and a grid, tactics have to enter into it. And, I try to represent, the Drow as best as I could.
Also, though, it's almost, speed is less of a factor in this edition than it was in 3rd or 4th, because I think the speed of most dwarves was 20 previously, so they gave them an extra 5 feet, so there's less of a gap now between the slower races. So I mean, if they would have kept that, in this edition, it would have been like
then it would have really been a massacre.
Because then I would, like Ray of Frost starts to be more of a thing where I can reduce your, I didn't drop it. I thought about it, but I didn't drop it in this encounter because the auto hit with the mag missile and
your guys. Had some pretty decent armor classes, and then when you tacked on the Shield of Faith, it really was lots and lots of dice rolling that were a miss. The demon really stepped up at that point in time by being able to hide and have advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Early on, I was hitting more often because I had a couple guys that the Fairy Fire actually was successful on, and again that gave them the advantage. So it's.
Well, you actually, as far as your Fairy Fire, it was 50%. You hit up 50% of this.
No, only 3 of them. It hit all but 2 of the guys, and only 3 of them failed their save.
Yeah, that's 50%.
Well,
there were 9 people. There were 9 guys.
Yeah, well, of the Duergar warriors.
Oh, okay. Well,
that and there was one that wasn't even in range, right?
Yeah, one.
Right, but I looked at it as 8 people were within range, and only 3 of them failed.
I mean, but also too, like. The 8 Drow warriors, like we basically there was a corridor of Fairy Fire because they were all invisible, so we figured, all right, fairly our characters or our Drow aren't going to know exactly where they are, but they're going to hear boot falls. So let's just do this whole line. So 8, I mean the action of all 8 Drow, the only thing they did was cast the same spell in a swath. So I mean, they all lost their turn to make 3 dudes be visible.
Right, but that really did
super
represent
helpful.
That really did present the opportunity for subsequent rounds of multiple rolls having the advantage on those guys.
They would have been up longer.
Well, I mean, from the same token, we had to spend the round to give you disadvantage,
right?
And to take advantage of being enlarged as well. Took a round as well, and we weren't able to actually do both at the same time.
Right.
They can't be enlarged and invisible, which would have made a huge difference.
Same thing with the caster, dude. There were so many things that, I can't be running this spell and this spell because, the Drow, the cliche Drow thing to do in the books and this and that, you levitate. You're behind a stalactite or whatever, and you cast spells from behind it. Well,
fly, levitate, Avard's black tentacles, cloud kill. Was there anything else on your list that was concentration?
And web.
And web.
Oh, and greater invisibility, right?
So 6 spells.
Everything I would have liked to have casted, and especially I would have loved to have cast from behind the stalactite up in the ceiling 60 feet or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, my spell goes away. I'm no longer levitating as soon as I cast another concentration spell.
Concentration has really changed the way
basically,
operate.
Your wizard isn't stacking spell upon spell anymore.
When in pretty much our very first evil game with this group, I actually had a Duergar as a player character, and he used to do that as a standard operating tactic for anything I would consider. Oh, this is going to be hard. I turn invisible. I'd enlarge. And he was a psionicist, so he would cast his animal affinity. So I would appear 3 rounds later, totally myrtleating this guy's back. But it would be three rounds that I was out of combat,
buffing.
And now they've totally taken that ability away because you can't enlarge or you can't go invisible and then enlarge.
As a wizard or a spellcaster, in general, you really have to check your spell selection. And this battle would have been way different had we had the opportunity to choose spells for,
But we ran them
for
pretty
both
much from
sides.
the
But
book.
we ran stuff right from the book.
And that's kind of what, the monster versus monster is supposed to be. When we looked at the Lich versus the Beholder, the Lich, you had a decent spell selection, but if you could have changed it, you absolutely would have.
Yeah.
And same thing here. Your fanatics would have loved to have been able to heal. We would have loved to have been able to have a fireball.
Although, all that being said, since a lot of my spells were concentration, I really spent a lot of my spell resources in enhancing, my magic missile or my lightning bolt to just, just to pile on the damage. And even if you're going to save, you're going to take more damage for it.
Right.
I had a bunch of spell slots, but some of my spells are like, all right, well, they're going to save versus this. It's not going to it's going to barely do any damage, and it's not going to, like the Ivar's Black Tentacle. It's such a great containment spell, but when it doesn't take effect, you're just going to walk right through it, and it only does 3d6 as far as the damage. Well, that 4th level spell is pretty well useless. I may as well buff a magic missile or a lightning bolt.
Well, and that's it too. Had you had the opportunity to pick your spells, you would have picked the spells that you could layer, because you can throw a fire shield on. You can use mage armor, and I'm sure if you look through the book, you can find some more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, so you just have or also
and cantrips. Cantrips is huge too. If you're when you're thinking about that as well, because that's one of the things you can do even if you cast a spell as a bonus action.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I even had many spells to do as a bonus action.
Having that advantage of having the bonus action, we had 2 spells that were bonus actions, and I think that really assisted us with getting things done.
Absolutely. I mean, having the buff spells of Shield of Faith, which you guys already had the high armor classes 16 and 18, buffed to an 18-20. I mean, we were looking at, at least for my guys, I was looking at a +4. The demon only had a +5, needing a 15 or a 16 to hit. That's only hitting a
lot of misses.
That demon really needed to be in dim light, so he got his chance to hide, so he got advantage to attack like that.
And the spiritual weapon can attack. First off, it's a bonus action to cast it, and it's also can attack as a regular melee attack, and then it can move and attack again as a bonus action. So those combined together give you a lot of attacks.
So getting two melee attacks at TA +1, can really crush through. I mean, if you roll well enough, one round you could take out a single Drow warrior.
And you have to get rid of that spell. You have to go kill the caster.
Yeah.
You can't. There's nothing to do about that spectral weapon except to spell it, which you guys didn't do.
Yeah, we didn't know that stuff.
Well, but here, the other side of that is if we had an elite Duergar out of the book, I feel like we would have had cooler things to do.
I agree.
More interesting options.
Because the Drow wizard gets to summon a demon.
Right.
Yeah.
We basically used a cleric light. It wasn't even really as good as a cleric.
It was a hate-filled cleric.
yeah. And one of their abilities is actually gives them advantage against certain types of things, which we already pretty much had covered.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a moot point.
So overall, a lot of time was put into this.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit since this is essentially we ran Monster versus Monster. We ran it in 5th edition. This is the longest 5th edition combat we've ever seen.
But it was it was 2 squads of 9 versus 9. That's pretty hefty.
They weren't our own player characters, so we're kind of looking back in the book for what they can do and what they've got.
There was definitely a lot of we've only had a handful of sessions. Well, at least I've only had a handful of sessions. You guys have probably had a little bit more of it, but none of us have gotten to the higher level spells
Absolutely
for your
not.
casters. So you gotta keep checking of what exactly does this do? What is the situation?
I think there's a bigger factor though, in how long it took, because we set it up as a deadly encounter.
Mm-hmm.
That means maxing out the XP for a 5th level party.
Right.
So if it wasn't a deadly encounter, it'd probably be more like a 6th or 7th level party.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those characters would have so many more options that they would be eliminating, either side much faster.
I agree. I mean, especially, if you get to a fighter who say, all right,
Great weapon fighter.
Great weapon fighter.
Took one of those Drow in one shot.
He's taken out a guy in one shot. Let's suppose, all right, at 6th level, he's already gotten his stat bumps. So he's at a +3 to strength.
Does he have a second attack yet?
Absolutely.
He has a second
He's
attack.
got a second attack. He gets a 5th level, and then he's got the ability to attack as a bonus action. So is that 3 or 4 hits?
It doubles.
So that's 4 swings, and at that level, you're at a +3 to hit, +3 to, +3 proficiency, +3 strength. So you're swinging a +6. You need a 9 or better to hit the basic Drow. He could technically, if he was in range of 4 of them, take out 4 in one go, because you're rolling 2d6 plus 3.
And and it depends, and there's so many cool options you can tack onto that. So I feel like even though this was a really long, drawn out battle for a 5th edition game, it doesn't reflect how combat really goes in 5th edition because of the way we did it.
The PC options are going to be a lot more, and essentially given proficiency bonus, which the monsters lack, skills, which the monsters lack a lot of. You're in a situation where the power base of the characters are so much higher, and even though it was a 9 versus 9, a party of 6 player characters, maybe even 5, could crush a lot of that right off the bat. And
how many rounds do you think we went?
12.
Yeah, see, in a combat
That's
would have never gone that long.
Yeah, I really don't think so. Yeah.
A mage who gets a well placed AOE spell takes out the Drow in one go. I mean,
the Duergar would have been tougher with the spells, but again, they would have been higher level, more powerful, and it would have really set up the warrior characters for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, like we recently played Pathfinder where we did have an hour and a half combat, and that was a much smaller scale combat in comparison. So I just feel like it's worth bringing up since we're talking monster versus monster. We're kind of 5th edition. This is the biggest combat we've ever seen. It's noteworthy.
absolutely.
Sure.
So this one goes to the Drow out of the book because part of it we couldn't really do out of the book. I feel like
so. I mean, I think the biggest contributing factors is we couldn't play the Duergar exactly out of the book, and the only factor we had to play with was we didn't want it to be a massive numbers game.
Right.
We could have said, all right, let's put a Drow mage, a Drow elite warrior, and a handful of Drow, and
versus like 600 Duergar.
it would have been 40 Duergar, to try and play. And in that situation,
We're not
like
running
Like Warhammer Fantasy at that point.
numbers are going to win out. This edition
Definitely
really
favors
shows
numbers.
Yeah, really shows.
it makes sense.
Absolutely, it matches what really happens in life.
Yeah.
And we tried to eliminate that factor for 2 reasons. One, we didn't want to have to act 40 different characters on a side, and 2, we didn't want that unbalancing issue to really play.
Let's not forget number 3. It would have been a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that was we didn't want to do 40 guys because it would be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So to our fan out there, Jordan X Lord, thank you for the suggestion and curse you for the suggestion. So
fun, yeah.
it was fun. It was enjoyable.
It was a lesson. We learned a lot about 5th edition large scale combat with inferior monsters.
Avoid it. Is that what we learned?
Right. Yeah.
So with that being said, click like, subscribe,
Comment, share, and watch, for the love of God. Give us some elite Duergars.
Yeah, really. They were a little outclassed.
We want revenge.
They were outclassed.
Revenge.
Right.
So you can find us pretty much everywhere on social media.
Nerdarchy.com and this
Twitter,
and that,
whatnot,
Facebook.
Facebooks. And with that, hey, till next time,
Stay nerdy.